Of course.
Sure. So good evening, everyone. I'm Nassau County Legislator Arnie Drucker. I'm so thankful for all of you who are participating in this Zoom workshop. Under normal pre-COVID conditions, we would be having it at one of the libraries, either in Plainview or Syosset or Hicksville or Jericho, but we're doing it this way now. And I just want to tell you that we're very lucky to have someone like Jeff Gold here with us hosting this or being the panelist, being the expert that he is. Jeff has done an amazing job helping thousands of taxpayers throughout the county over the number of years understand what it is, what's it all about to grieve your taxes. He's one of the foremost experts we have in the county. So I want to thank you, Jeff, and for your time and your expertise. I want to thank you, Liana, for your assistance this evening and helping out. I just want to make a couple of quick announcements. The deadline to file tax grievances has been extended to April 30th. So that's a good thing. It was, for that, I believe it was March 1st. Now it's April 30th. And also the county executive today was able to obtain the consent or the approval from the governor to extend the deadline to pay the first half 2021 general taxes. It's now been extended from February 10th to March 12th. So that's also a good thing. The link to this recording, in case you want to watch it again or you didn't understand something, you want to hear it again, you want to just clarify certain things, the link for this program will be made available tomorrow on Facebook at facebook.com/Legislator Arnold W. Drucker. It will also be emailed to anyone who registered for this program. I'll be conducting 2 more tax grievance workshops. These will be given by the Nassau County Assessment Review Commission, ARC. And they're taking place on February 1st at 10 a.m. and February 26th at 7 p.m. And the links, again, are available on my website and also at nassaucounty.gov. And we'll put the links in the chat tonight. So anyway, Jeff, take it away. And again, thank you for everything. Thank you for being such a resource to us.
Thanks, Arnie. Appreciate it. Hey, my name is Jeff Gold. I'm an attorney in private practice. And getting a little feedback here.
You have an echo, Jeff.
Yeah, I know, I hear it. That's better. Okay. Hi, all. My name is Jeff Gold. I'm an attorney in private practice in Belmore. And that doesn't qualify me to help you grieve your assessment. But for 4 years, I was a member of the Nassau County Board of Assessors. In that regard, I helped usher in the 2002 assessment, reassessment, which was a complete reassessment, including photographs of every home. And then I went over and I served on as a commissioner of the Assessment Review Commission for ARC. So I think I'm the only person in the county who has served both as the board that determines your taxes or your tax assessment and the board that helps you with your grievance and hears your grievance of your tax assessment. So I bring a unique perspective to it. I know what goes into setting your assessment. I understand, I think, quite a lot about how difficult it is to do a reassessment. And I understand what ARC will and will not look at in order to determine whether you're entitled to a reduction. So as Legislator Drucker advised, your grievance this year is due by April 30th, 2021. 11:59 on April 30th, the computer shuts off. We've had people wait to the last minute to file. There's no need to wait to the last minute. It literally will take you maybe a half hour, 40 minutes the first time, and after that, 10 minutes. And then if you get a reduction of your assessment, all of the savings is yours. You don't have to share it with a law firm or another type of firm. You get to keep every bit. And we've had members save, this is extreme, but we've had members save so much money that their reduction in taxes was $15,000. They were unique properties, but you can do it yourself and get a reduction. If you're entitled to a reduction, you're going to get that reduction, whether you do it with on your own or through a firm. And in fact, this year, I think it's more important than ever that you file on your own, or at a minimum file so that you have a grievance that is narrowly tailored to your house and your community. You know more about your house than any attorney or any law firm or any grievance firm could possibly know. And you can provide more information on that than they can. Now, the reason I say this year it's so important is because the county, we know how high real estate prices are right now. They're saying they're 15% up from last year. And I think in some areas, prices are even higher than they were, more than 15% greater than they were a year ago. It is a very tight market. Less houses are available for sale. And you're looking at bidding wars on multiple houses, multiple offers on almost every house, especially houses between 400 and 700,000. Very hard to find those right now. So because every house in every community in Nassau County has gone up by more than 6%, the county has frozen your assessment this year. That means that whatever your final assessment is for 2021, 2022, that's also going to be your starting assessment for this year that's coming up, 2022, 2023. So at the worst case, the county determined your assessed value when it determined what your 2021 valuation was going to be. And you know when they did that? They did that your 21-22 valuation was going to be. And they did that in 2019, the end of 2019, because they had to set your valuation so that you could grieve your tax assessment as of January 2, 2020. That had to be set roughly October so they could get those letters out to you. When they were set in October, they only had sales prices back to July of 2022. July of 2019. So right now, you're starting the 22-23 grievance period, which is you have until April 30th, with a valuation that was determined in 2019. And that doesn't even include any reductions you got for the filing that you did in 2020 for the 21-22 grievance period. Very confusing, but you're grieving a year in advance. So prices now are up easily 20% since that. This means that to show that you earn a reduction or are entitled to a reduction, you should have to show that there are property sales in your neighborhood of similar homes that are selling and have sold for less than your 21-22 assessment, which was established sometime in 2019. You can imagine this is tough, but you know your home and you know your neighborhood better than anyone else, and you can do this. I would say that of the 300-400 grievances I've looked at this year, I've been able to find valid comparables on 80% of them. And I believe these houses are all entitled to and will get reductions. Now, I know a lot of you are asking the question, if my valuation was set in 2019 and I got a reduction in 21 for the 21-22 year, why should I bother filing? And it's really simple. The county has done an excellent job valuing property. I think almost all of the assessments that I've looked at are somewhat supportable, if not fully supportable. I don't see any ridiculous numbers. Under the old system, the Mangano system, You had homes that were valued at $1.2 million, $1.3 million, assessed for $550,000. Why? Because they grieved every year. They got massive reductions. The rolls became so out of whack that ARC had to give reductions to everybody that filed. And in some years, 90 to 95% of the people that filed grievances got reductions. Now, that's not going to happen anymore. As of today, I was advised that for 21-22, 21-22, which is the pending year. I'm sorry, 21-22. People have already, 80% of the people have heard already. There were 250,000 grievances. Roughly 200,000 people have heard already. And of those, about 50%, about 25%, 50,000 have gotten reductions. That's much less than in past years. But people are still getting reductions. And you can't guess as to who or why people are getting reductions. I've seen roughly 4 dozen homes where people have gotten reductions to less than they paid within the last 2 to 3 years. And that's, at ARC. That just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I mean, I can understand, within a few points of what they paid. If they bought in January of 2020 or December of 2020, maybe a few points, but no. I can't sit here and tell any one of you that you have a house that you shouldn't file an assessment grievance on. So I'm encouraging you to file. If you file on your own, there's absolutely no risk. There's no charge to file from the county, and the county can't raise your assessment if you file a tax assessment grievance. So there's no risk. Now, if you use a firm to do it, there's some risk. For example, my firm charges $250. It's a flat rate. That's all you pay. You save $5,000. You only paid the $250. But the risk is you lose that $250. If you use one of the contingent firms and you save $5,000, well, you might pay $2,000. You might pay $2,500. That's a lot of money. So I'm encouraging everybody to do it themselves. And as you can see, and I think, I can tell from the membership group, the participants group, many of you are members. I formed a group, Nassau Grieve Your Tax Assessment Free, on Facebook. I formed it, well, we're in our 7th year, and it has grown to 30,000 members. It should be 31,000 by the time we're finished with the seminar tonight, because we're getting really close to 31,000. In this group, I show you exactly how to file your tax assessment grievance. I show you almost all of the secrets that I know on how to file. I can't show you them all because some of it's just instinctive. You get it from filing a lot of individualized grievances. I'm going to show you how to choose comparables. What's a comparable? A comparable is a sale of a home in your neighborhood that has sold and that is similar to yours, is in close proximity to yours, preferably is the same style of yours, is the same age as yours. But if you can't find a perfect comparable, hopefully you'll be able to find other comparables that help with this. Now, a comparable is not a fire sale, where there's been a fire at the building. It's not a foreclosure. You can't use a foreclosure, although the county does let you use a foreclosure if your purchase was a foreclosure. They'll let you use your own sale as a comparable. The county will not let you use short sales by banks. They will not let you use bank-owned properties. They will not let you use divorce settlement homes or that are a part of a divorce settlement to value other people's properties. So when a lot of people ask, well, my neighbors, and we see this question asked every day in the group, my neighbors are paying less than I am. Okay, that's very possible because we're in a reassessment period where there's a phase-in. And what a phase-in is the county, and I think it was really smart to do it, determined that there were going to be homes that, because of reassessment, were going to go up $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, even some going to go up $5,000 and $10,000. Not every home. They found that the average home was going to go up about $1,000 that was going up, and the average home that was going down was going to go down about $1,000. But that there were going to be extremes. And that a lot of these extremes were going to be with people that were on fixed incomes and that had grieved every year for many years, had gotten into the psychological aspect that you need to file grievances every year. And they felt that this would be a rush for people to leave Nassau County. That if people saw their taxes going up $2,000 in 1 year, they would run for the hills. So the county legislator, with a vote of 17, by a vote of 17 with 2 abstentions, voted to have a phase-in, meaning that if you're going up in value, taxes, you're going to go up over 5 years. So you have time to figure out whether you can live here, whether you need to, whether you can find a way to make money, whether you can find ways to pay your tax bill, so that people didn't have to rush. This was actually a really smart decision, because if even 10% more houses went on the market, it would drive down house prices. It would destabilize the Nassau County real estate market. And obviously at the time they did this, they couldn't envision that we were going to have COVID or pandemic buying or the robust market we have now. Essentially, by the phase-in works by the county giving homes that were grossly underassessed and underassessed an exemption. And that exemption evaporates at 20% a year. So people, if I actually know of a home not that far from us in Belmore, where the people had assessed the home, grieved the home down to $525,000, but the house was $1 million. So they have a very large TPP exemption. And ultimately they're going to go up $7,000, $8,000, but it's going to be over a 4-year period or 5-year period. So we'll talk a little bit more about the TPP and how it works. But I think what I need to do first is to show you how to grieve a property. So one of the things I want you to do is, hopefully most of you are members of the group, but become familiar with the group. The reason I say work through the Facebook group, well, one, we're here to answer all your questions. I have some very good moderators that work with me in the group. In addition to my assistant, Leanna, we have Mike Fuchs and Scott Diamond and Maureen Doyle and Robert Keene, who are around to answer questions. Plus, we have a lot of members in the group who are now experienced tax assessment grievers, and they'll be there to help you and explain things. Additionally, I've been doing this a long time, so we have all these files that answer all of your questions about how to choose comparables and how to, what if the information's wrong on your Facebook page, what the grievance period is, answering all your questions related to STAR, answering questions with respect to, the effect that tax assessment grievances have on your school taxes, whether you should accept an ARC offer. I've done the work. It's all there for you, and you'll be able to figure it out. But the most important of the files, and it's also the pinned announcement in the group, is right here. And if you go into the files or the announcements, you will find the pinned announcement. And it's at the top of the page. You click on that pinned announcement. Lee, can you click on the pinned announcement? That's it. I know people are blocking us. Okay. Okay, so we start with the pinned announcement. And when people ask me questions, I want all members to read this every year. And if you see here, it says the deadline now is April 30th, 2021. At least twice a week, people ask me, when is the deadline? And then I know they haven't read the pinned announcement. I don't expect there to be any further reductions this year or extensions of the grievance period. Now, you are grieving by April 30th, 2021. The county will have roughly 14 months actually 12 months from that period to respond to your grievance. They must respond to your grievance by April 1, 2022. And if you don't like the response you have the ability to go to small claims court. That's called a SCAR. You get to go to a small claims assessment review hearing. It costs you $30. They can't increase your assessment. And you get to hear your case before a hearing officer. But the SCAR period is the month of April. So they have to let you know before April 1 of 2022 how you did. Now, you're grieving for the 22-23 tax period. The school tax bill comes out October 2022, and the general tax bill will come out in January 2023. So that's why we refer to this as the 22-23 tax period. Now, if you have a mortgage, you don't see, let's start with people who don't have mortgages first. If you're lucky enough not to have a mortgage, when your 2022 tax bill comes out, October 2022, you'll see the benefit of any reduction in assessment that you received, and you will pay a reduced tax bill. If you have a mortgage, you won't see your savings right away, because what happens is your bank is escrowing your taxes in your insurance, and your bank isn't going to do an escrow reconciliation until early in 2023, after it pays your general tax bill and your first half of your school tax bill. But it's still the 2022-23 year. So again, we are now grieving to get a reduction that you aren't going to see take effect until 2022 and the end of 2022. There's nothing you can do about the bills you just received. You can't reduce those bills because those are based upon an assessment that went final in April of 2020. Okay. Your next bills are going final in April 2021, and those are going to take effect at the end of 2021 and the beginning of 2022. So you see, we're grieving in advance. Now, if you read all of the announcements, I tell you where to start. So if you join the group and you ask me, where do I start? What's the Facebook page? What's the page where you have the links? Then I know you haven't read, because this is only a few lines down on the page. You can also file a grievance on paper, but because we're on the computer tonight, I know that you all are computer savvy and can follow this. So if you're registering for the first time, you come to this link in paragraph 3 and you click on it, and it says register with ARC. See right over here on the right, and you click on register with ARC. And then it's a very simple form. Really interesting. A lot of the firms that have you sign up to file their grievances for you, they ask you for all this information: your name, your address, your phone number, your fax number. Now, what's interesting here is when you first sign up the first time, and pretty much anytime you log into Arrow now, it asks you whether you want an electronic announcement, email, or whether you want it on paper. Now, this is really your choice, but I recommend paper. The reason I recommend paper, and all my clients get paper, is people change their email addresses. People leave their jobs and get new email addresses. Some people get hundreds of pieces of junk email every day. And it's just too easy to see an email that says Arrow or County and to assume it's garbage and not go to it. It's much harder to get a letter in the mail from the Assessment Review Commission that discusses your tax grievance and to think that's garbage. So I actually recommend that you use paper. The county much prefers that you use electronic. It's your choice. I prefer paper. You know your own habits. You know if what you're looking for. I know with respect to my own house, I know my email usage. I know that I'm going to pay attention if I get something from the county. So I actually, for me personally, I use electronic. It's simple, but other people, I just find it so much easier to use paper. People are used to it. So once you log in, you pick a password. Don't, yeah, somebody asked how long I'm going to be talking tonight. All night. No, just literally about an hour, hour and a half we'll be going. Password, you enter your user ID, you enter your password. Look, nobody is breaking into your computer and filing a tax grievance for you, a tax assessment grievance. It doesn't happen. So keep your user ID really simple. Keep your password really simple. Oh, this year they require an uppercase? Okay, so you need an uppercase and a number in your in your password, but it's really simple, and don't get too fancy. I always laugh when I see people with like 25 letter passwords. I have no idea how they remember them all. All right, you complete your registration, you come down here, you click, you're going to get an email from the county that says you're registered. Then what do? We go back to the, I actually, at that point, I do recommend most people should just shut off the computer for a couple minutes and take a break. And is there a Zoom ID for tonight's talk? Yes, there is, but you have to go to my page to get it. The Nassau Grievance Tax Assessment Free, there is a Zoom. We can't log you in. All right, so what we're going to do then is you go back to the form that I created, the pinned announcement. Okay, whether the post office is reliable or not, yeah, I send everything to the county certified. Okay, and I recommend you do that. So what do you do after you register? You go to this link, you put in your you put in your password. Over here it says log in, you log in. You put in your password, you put in your code, you log in, you're now logged in. You scroll down to, do you have a good case for an appeal? You see right there. And you click on that. And then what you do is you put in your address. Okay, and we're putting in an address. And this year they require, for the first time, that you actually put in a zip code along with the street. And you come up and we're going to look at 8 Dewey Street in East Rockaway. And I have the permission of the owner of this house to grieve their assessment. I've actually filed it once. And I have their permission to grieve it online. Okay, so what we're looking at is 8 Dewey Street in East Rockaway. It's a one-family home. We want to make sure we have that right. It's in the right school district. It's not waterfront. We want to see how big it is. It's 1,463 square feet. There's one full bath. There's a one-car garage. And what we're going to do then, we're going to look and make sure the assessed value of $394 is correct. And you would think that in today's market, it would be really hard to find any homes with assessed values of lower than $394. But that isn't the case. So we're going to hit find sales. And we're going to look. Now, typically, the first house underneath your assessed your home is the best comparable according to the county's computer system. And so that house, since it's at 330, is a good comparable. It's right, it's right nearby. It's right in the neighborhood. It's roughly the same size, although in this case, a little smaller. It's an older home. So we're going to choose that. And we're going to then scroll down. We're not going to choose the next one. You know why? Because the next one's $449,000. That's a recent sale price. We don't want to use that one. We don't want to use the next one, which is 527, nor do we want to use the one that's 465. They're not going to help you get a reduction. Now, the county is going to say that those are all good comparables, but we are going to use the next two, which are also good comparables. They're approximately the same size. They're a little bit smaller, but they're old style. They're in the same neighborhood. And we're going to go to page 2. And are there any on page 2? Well, there's this one on Davis Street. And let's see if there's any others. No. So we have found 4 comparables. If you find one comparable, that's a good comparable, that's okay. You find 2, you find 3, the more you can find, the better. If you can't find, now we're going to click select properties. And we're going to come down, and what the county does is it compares these comparable, these sold properties based upon the lot area, the number of bathrooms, the living area, and it adjusts them. So even though these are all a little bit smaller, they add some value to them. They make some adjustments for whether there's a basement, how many bathrooms there are, whether there's a garage, and they come up with values. And in most cases, these values are lower than the 394 assessed value. So we're going to actually use them. So what do? We scroll down a little bit more and we hit continue. And since we've already logged in, we hit agree. Shows that we might get a reduction because we're in the ballpark. The county used to tell you, no, you weren't going to get a reduction. Now they don't tell you, they don't guide you. You have to judge your own, judge for yourselves. The county used to tell you you weren't going to get an adjustment, but a reduction when many, many people did, when 90% of the people were. So they discouraged a lot of people from filing. Okay. Then you're going to hit continue to submit an appeal. What is the type of property? It's a one-family home. All right. You're going to fill in the names of the people who reside at the house. Okay. And then you're going to scroll down a little further. You're going to hit individual, and you're going to look at the 362. And if you think that's a fair valuation, you can keep 362. You can also lower it a little bit. Sometimes I tell people lower it 10%. Below the 362, in this case, I think that's as low as we can ever hope to go for this house in East Rockaway. So we're going to leave that, but you have the ability to cross it out and put another number in. Is the property offered for sale or under contract? The answer is no. If it is, and you're selling it for less than your 394, that's a really good indication that the house is worth less than 394, and you should put that in, and you should actually upload a copy of your contract or multiple listing service. Now, we are going to show you parts D in a moment, but before we do that, I just want to show you something else. If you scroll down, you see the 4 comparables that we've included. You come over here, and if you click on this magnifying glass, it brings up a property search. And in that property search location, you can put the address of any other property in the county that you think is a comparable that has sold recently. So if you know a house in your neighborhood that is sold for less than your house that you think is a good comparable, you can put it in, and it will let you do as many of these as you want. If you don't find comparables from the county, one of the things I recommend that you do is you use, you go to Google and you put in the phrase sold properties on, in this case, Dewey Street. So it's, sold properties on Farnham Place, sold properties on Everett Avenue, sold properties on Scranton Avenue. Whatever your street is, you put on sold properties, and you will, unless you live on a very small street, you'll come up with recent sales on your street. And then you do that for the next street. So, when I lived in, on Bell Road, I'd do sold properties on Bell Road. It intersects with Lydia Lane. So I do sold properties on Lydia Lane. It intersects with Ira. So I do sold properties on Ira Road, and sold properties on Ellen Road. And you would come up with sales that the county didn't consider for you. And you can use these. And the reason you can find sales is, remember, the county, it takes about 6 months for a sale to take place for it to show up in the county's computer system. But it shows up on realtor.com or the one key multiple listing service within a week or two of the closing, sometimes the next day. So you can find more sales this way. And I recommend it if you're not finding a lot of comparables and you really want to see what values are in your neighborhood, you use that, you go to Google. Okay, so we're not going to add a house in this time. We're going to go back to that. And we're just going to, before we're done, I want to take you through Part D. I think Part D is really important this year. Okay, because in Part D, you get to explain what in your house needs to be done that warrants a reduction in your assessment. Okay, they ask you a lot of questions. I wouldn't worry about the year built if that's wrong, or the year sold if that's wrong. Just or the price that you paid. You can just leave that. But there are things here, you don't have to worry about the number of baths or kitchens unless they have you down as a 2-family and you're really a 1. And then you need to do some explaining besides that. But for example, does the house have, is it by commercial property? Is the you would want to put that down because that's going to help you with your valuation. Is the house by an apartment house? Is there a street with a painted center line or traffic separation? You can use the same facts as if you used other facts last year and they're the same, you can use them this year as well. And then you're going to write in the other facts section. For example, this house flooded during Sandy and was not elevated. So you would write flooded during Hurricane Sandy and was not elevated thereafter. Okay. And that may actually make the house a little, no one's going to pick this up and look at it. But, this to most people is going to mean that the house is going to be a little harder to sell. And it might explain why there's a reduction, why a reduction is warranted. So what I would write is house was flooded during Sandy, was not elevated, and therefore many people will not buy. Many people may not be attracted to it. I'd also add in this grievance that the house has only 1 bathroom. A lot of people will not buy a home with 1 bathroom. Now, this house has room to add a bath. It has room to add a half bath. I mean, so, for $5,000, you can fix that problem, but it does affect marketability. Gee, I hope the owner's not watching. All right. So once we put all of these, issues that are, that I think are relevant, we come down to the bottom. So we have to signature showing that we're the owner. You can, if the house is in a trust, either the trust or the trustee or the beneficiary can do it. I think we've already filed the grievance on this house, but we're just going to submit it anyhow, and we'll erase one tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I thought we said no. Okay. But I want to show you what submit application form. It does show that we filed, but I wanted to show you up here that we can, you see where I am, like, no, right here, add view or add attachments. Okay. Okay. So we're going to view it. We're going to add attachments. We aren't really going to add them, but if you click on here, It, did it allow you to add? No. If you click on add attachments. No? All right. We're having a little glitch on the system. It allows you to upload or include JPEGs or PDFs or other documents that are relevant. Contract for sale, an estimate to have repair work done. Photographs. Okay, you see, we'd like to add documents. You can add photographs of pretty much anything you want. If it needs, let's say there's you want to show the old kitchen. You can add the old kitchen. You want to add more comparables or a page of comparables, you can do that. There's really no limitation. You can add an appraisal report. Are there advantages? Somebody wants to know, are there advantages to using comps that are on the county website? And yes, there are advantages to using comps that are on the county website. And what that is, when you use a comp that's on the county website, you can see how it adjusts. You can see how much value the county adds because it's bigger or smaller or has an additional bathroom. When you aren't using comps that are on the county website, you have to use your own knowledge of the house that you're comparing to versus your house. And that's not, again, you pick that up with, if you're in Levittown and the houses were built about the same time, no additions were made, you have a general idea, or they added, dormers, you might have an idea, but you don't always know what's in the other house. And so ARC, will make adjustments. They will have the software that can do that, but you don't have that available to you. That is all there is to filing a tax assessment grievance. Now, in the other facts section where we were put in about Sandy and we put in about, there's only one bathroom, you can put in anything you think that affects the valuation of your house. You have nasty neighbors, may not affect. You've a lot of traffic. You're by a school. A lot of rentals in the neighborhood. No parking on the street. It may not get you a big reduction, but it might catch somebody's attention when they're reviewing it. And, maybe you might be able to save a few dollars. The biggest thing, though, is, condition issues, especially significant condition issues. And that's what you should be putting in there. I think flooding, being in a flood zone is a big issue. I grew up in Lynbrook. We had a lot of friends from East Rockaway. They live on the small canals. The canals have gotten full and the docks were not in great shape. You have to add a dock or a bulkhead. That's a big deal. So if you give an estimate of what the repairs are needed to bring your dock to, into good condition, something like that could be really helpful to the assessors to figure out whether you're entitled to a reduction. Because if a house is sold with a new dock or a new bulkhead, it may sell for a lot more money than a house with an older bulkhead. Same with new kitchens, old kitchens. Those adjustments can be made, and the county does make them. Once you file your grievance, you're going to get an acknowledgement from the county that they received it. And then, as I said, sometime before April 1 of 2022, you will hear from the county. The county has put in various programs. They've changed the programs over the years, whether you get a conference, if you aren't happy, whether you get a lot of reviews, a second review. Now the county's not offering a conference if you're not happy with your reduction, but they will give you a second review. I heard from one of our clients today that on their second review, they were offered another $100,000 reduction to about 17% off of their assessed value. So I know the county is starting to do these second reviews. But that is essentially the whole process. And so if you can follow what I just showed you, you don't need to pay anyone to do your grievance. Now, but somebody asked how old can comps be? That's a really good question. I think this year, because we're in a really elevated market, you're really looking at comps from March 2020 to today. If you're using older comps, they're going to add a ton of additional value to those comps. So if you went back and used a 2019 comp, let's say it's $400,000, that assessor who reviews it's going to look at that and say, you know, that house may have sold for $400,000, but today it's going to sell for 20% more, or it's going to sell for 15% more. So you really need to work to use comparables that are as close as time to January 2, 2021, which is the target date for the assessment. Again, you need to use houses that are roughly the same size. Another member is telling us they got a offer today on a second review after being denied. I hope it was a good one. All right. My theory has always been with tax assessment grievances. You file your grievance, you keep doing it, you do it every year until ARC gets it right and stops giving grievance reductions out to people who don't deserve them, and to you when you don't deserve it. At some point, the system's going to be accurate. And I think this may be the year where ARC would be within its rights to give only 20 to 25% reductions. It's not going to make the grievance firms happy. I think my clients will do really well because we file individualized grievances for each and every home. And I think that the people who file on their own will, know when they're filing a good grievance. And I think those that file a good grievance and work really hard at it are going to get reductions. But look, if you paid $500 for your house and it's assessed at $700, I wouldn't expect a reduction. If ARC gave that house a reduction, that there's something seriously wrong. But you still have the right to file. I'm hearing from some of the legislators, why are we advising people to file if this assessment is accurate? Well, you know what? The assessment's accurate, but even the best assessments, 10% of the homes are going to be entitled to reductions. And in these cases, you also want people to file because you want them to have confidence in the system. You want them to understand the value of their homes and of what homes are selling for in their neighborhood. You also, by filing, you show the assessor, not the Assessment Review Commission, but if the Assessment Review Commission gives a lot of reductions, the Assessment Review Commission gives a lot of reductions in, say, Seacliff, then the assessor will know that he needs to take another look at Seacliff. Now there's a female assessor, but she'll know that she's got to take another look at Seacliff to make sure that the grievances are fair. People are asking the question, why are we filing if the rolls are frozen? Well, some people didn't file in 21, 22. They thought they were accurate. Now they're hearing that there are people being reduced to less than they paid for their homes. So they have a right to try and file. We don't know what the ARC standards are going to be next year. And you have to, so you file to protect yourself. There was a time, and if you use a bank appraisal, it had better be, 2019 to 2020. You file because you want to make sure that your assessment is as low as you can get it. There was a time, and it wasn't all that long ago, where I told people that if you're fairly assessed, if you can sell your house for your assessed value, you shouldn't file a grievance. And then the people, Cookie, you on here? Cookie, raise your hand. Cookie's been to 10 annual seminars in a row, and I'm sure she's here somewhere. Anyhow, I told this one friend, neighbor, that she could sell her house for more than her assessed value. She didn't file a grievance, and unknown to her, ARC had put into a a place that it was under the Mangano administration, that everybody that filed 3 years in a row got a 6% reduction, whether they deserved it or not. And so I cost her 6%. And that year she didn't bake me cookies. So you file if you don't trust the Assessment Review Commission. I don't trust the Assessment Review Commission yet. Somebody asked about the 6% cap. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. Okay. You file because you want your assessment to be as low as possible. Now, I just want to take a second and explain what the difference is, why the relationship between assessment reductions and taxes. You know your school tax is the biggest part of your tax bill, about 60 to 70% in most districts. And the way your school determines the amount of your school tax is they take all the property value in the district and they multiply that property value by a tax rate. And that brings them to the levy of the amount of money that they need to raise each year in order to educate our children and run the school districts. So they have a tax levy, they have to meet that, and they get a given the amount of property value in a district, and then they develop the tax rate. So what happens when you grieve your assessment? When you're successful grieving your tax assessment, you take value out of the school district. And that forces up the tax rate just a little bit. So what happened is when the Mangano administration was giving reductions to 90% of the people that filed tax grievances, they were forcing up the school tax rates in every district where a lot of people filed grievances. So if we take a look at Wantor, for example, at one point, 70 to 80% of the people in Wantor were filing tax grievances. 90% were getting reductions. And as a result, a massive amount of property was taken out of the school district. And that forced the school tax rate up 7%. So people who got reductions of less than 7%, they stayed about the same. People who got reductions of more than 7%, they went down. Okay, they actually saw a reduction in taxes. But the people who didn't file at all saw a 7% increase on top of the 2% increase that the additional funds that the county needed or the school district needed. So they were seeing 7 and 8% increases because all the people in their districts got reductions. And if the county did not reassess and continued to have the old rules that were not defendable, you would end up every year seeing 8 to 10% increases in your school taxes. And the reason was because the rules weren't defendable. So they had to give reductions to everybody that asked. Now, based on what I've heard, if 25% of the people are getting reductions, it's still going to be, it's going to push up school tax rates a little bit, but nowhere near the 6-7% we were seeing in some areas. I'm sure, though, the next question is going to be asked, but our school tax rates went up so high this year. And they did. And part of that, and actually a big part of that this year, is the phasing. Because you remember how I told you that the county is phasing in assessments for all properties that are showing increases at 20% a year? Well, that means that right now in most school districts, 50% of the homes, the ones that are going to be paying more taxes when reassessment is done in 5 years, are phasing up, meaning that they are not yet paying taxes based upon their entire assessed value. They are paying based upon a taxable value. The Taxable value is the assessed value minus all the exemptions. And you know what the exemptions normally are. The exemptions are star, enhanced star, senior exemption, veterans exemption, combat veterans exemption, firefighters exemption. So you take your assessed value, you subtract your exemptions, you get your taxable value. This year, many homes, if not more than half, have a TPP, taxpayer protection exemption. Because there's a taxpayer protection exemption, a lot of homes aren't paying anywhere near taxes on their full value. And because they aren't, this forces up the tax rates. But now, next year, when the homes are paying more of closer to their full value, a tremendous amount of property tax value is coming into the districts. Property value is coming into the district. And the districts will be able to reduce, the districts will be able to reduce their tax rates by huge amounts. You're going to see, if this year your school tax rate was $3,000, by the end of reassessment, it's going to be $2,000. And those of you who are properly assessed, which should be pretty much everybody, are going to see large reductions in your actual taxes. The people who are underassessed, who are going to be paying larger and larger shares of their market value each of the years for the next 5 years, they're going to see the increases. Just because you saw an increase this year doesn't mean you're going to see an increase for the next 5. And likewise, there are some homes, in particular those with really large TPPs, exemptions, homes that were massively underassessed, like that $500,000 waterfront home I was telling you about. Well, that home might actually be paying less this year, but next year it's going to start paying a lot more. So we're in a transition year. It's really hard to tell whether or not you're going up or down based upon what you're paying this year. That's why when you see these legislators say 65% of all homes are going up, that's just not true. Remember, this is a zero-sum game. So if 65% of the homes are going up, 35% are going down, the county and the school districts still receive exactly the same money. Nobody's seeing a tax increase. What they're seeing is a temporary increase as a result of an assessment change. An assessment change that was needed to fix 10 years of corruption with respect to the tax rolls. Had to be done. This is the 1 year that's painful. It should next year, increase. People will start seeing reductions. By next year, no more than 55% of homes will be paying more than they are for last year. And by the year after that, it's going to even out more. The homes that were underassessed are going to be paying more. The homes that were overassessed are going to be paying less. And people will start seeing the reductions of assessment. I've run the numbers on a number of homes. It does work. The county has issued TPP letters, taxpayer protection letters. You can see those letters at My Nassau County, My Nassau Property. Yeah, mynassauproperty.gov. It's mynassauproperty.gov. You can actually see your TPP letter. It should give you an indication of whether you're going up or down. The precise numbers are not perfect. The reason they're not perfect is they were generated in 2019, and they couldn't anticipate what the tax levies were going to be in each of the school districts. But they're close. They're, if it shows you dropping down, from 15,000 to 12,000, I'd assume you're going to 13,000, you'd probably be okay. But, take a look at your TPP letter. We do have the TPP letter shows you what your taxes would be if the TPP is in place, and without the TPP, you actually need to look at with the TPP, because we have it, and then that'll show you what they should approximately be this year. And without the TPP is where the county believes you will be going over the 5-year period of reassessment, but it doesn't take into account school tax levy increases. but it's a pretty good estimate. And I recommend you use it. So somebody wanted to know about TPP. I don't know what they wanted to know about the TPP, but the TPP is just the taxpayer protection plan. It phases in increases for people that were underassessed. Unfortunately, as you phase in increases for people that were underassessed, you also phase in the reductions for people that were overassessed. What's interesting here, though, is your TPP letter is on mynassauproperty.com. NassauPropertyNY. Maybe we can show it. Okay. Go to 8 Dewey and put in the text one. Okay. So I understand people who are overassessed and who are phasing down to new values aren't happy that they don't get they don't pay taxes based upon their fair assessment right now. They are actually paying taxes based upon their fair assessment right now. The problem is because there's a phase in, school tax rates are elevated. All tax rates are elevated, but you see it mostly at school tax rate. Oh, so while I was talking, somebody just finished. Thanks, Steve. Good luck. They filed their grievance while we were talking. It really is that simple. Okay, this is mynassauproperty.gov. You come here, you put in your address, you click I'm not a robot. I am not a robot. And my kids, if they're watching and dying right now that I did that, go ahead and you click. Okay. So if you come over here, right up at the top, it's taxpayer protection plan. You go to your taxpayer protection plan notice, and that'll give you an idea of where this house is going. So you see this house, well, they had a lot of, this house had a lot of exemptions for enhanced star, et cetera. And it shows that this house is actually going up about $2,000 because it was so underassessed. But the letter is fairly explanatory. Can you just show without the taxpayer protection plan? Scroll up. Keep going. Keep going. You see right here, without the taxpayer protection plan, this value is where this house will be in 5 years at the end of reassessment. And scroll up. This is where the house is now, and this is where the house is after 1 year, this current year. So it's actually a good indication. There is no better plan than a 5-year phase-in. Maybe the county could have done a 3-year phase-in. Every single legislator voted for it, except the 2 who want to run for county executive. And they just wanted to sit on the fence, turn themselves into popsicles. I don't know. It was a really bad idea on their part, not to be trying to politicize assessment. Their plan, the GOP plan, was actually to phase in assessment over 25 years because they did not want to change the level of assessment from 0.25 to 0.10. And that would have meant that even with a valid assessment, it would have been that way for 6 years. Somebody's just asked a question about STAR. I answer all the questions in the files about STAR that you could possibly have. STAR is a program established by the state that offers you a reduction of your taxes based upon an exemption. You apply for it with the state. Once you own the house, it's only for people who own and occupy a house. It's only for people who earn $500,000 household income or less. If you earn between $250 and $500, the county may hold it up for a year, for a while to confirm your income, and you get a check. Anybody who's bought a house since 2015, they get a STAR check. If you bought before 2015 and you haven't changed the deed, you get a STAR credit off your taxes. If you change your deed for any reason, you get married, you add somebody to the house, you remove somebody from the house, then you have to reapply for STAR. If you own a house in Queens, as somebody just asked, they have a similar process, but it's through it's done through the New York City, and I believe it's done on paper, and it's not done through a website like this. Same in Suffolk. Suffolk's done by each town. The county grievance process is the most advanced in the state. The county website that provides you with the comparables is one of the most consumer friendly in the entire state, if not the entire country. They make it really easy for you to file grievances, so easy that 250,000 people a year are filing grievances, and it doesn't appear that we're able to stop them. And I can't in good faith tell people not to file their grievance this year, because I just don't know what ARC's going to do. And if ARC is still giving out reductions at 25 to 50% a year, then the people who don't get reductions are going to pay more in taxes. So you need to actually file, and maybe you get lucky and maybe you don't deserve a reduction. But if you get one, your taxes will not go up as much as your neighbors who don't file or who don't get a reduction. You're doing this to protect yourself. We will one day hit a period of time where ARC is only giving reductions to people who deserve them, and where everybody can look and say, my neighbors are assessed the same as I am for similar houses. And maybe less people will do it. You do realize we have an industry in Nassau County. I'm sort of on the fringe of that industry, but we have an industry of firms that file tens of thousands of grievances every year. And during the 8 years of the Mangano administration, these firms made $500 million. That was estimated by Newsday. That means that they got $1 billion in reductions for their clients, and they made about $500 million, which was then taken out of the school districts. And people didn't get to use it for vacations, and people didn't get to use it to buy cars, because they had to pay firms to fill out this form that I've shown you how to fill out, that's going to take 15 to 20 minutes of time. Okay. The system isn't broken anymore. It's been fixed. Valuations are pretty good. But so long as we have an industry that is going to file 200,000 grievances a year. Last year, pro se litigants, pro se filers, which is what I'm hoping you all become, filed roughly 40,000 grievances. The rest were filed by firms. And, they're not making what they were, but it's certainly, they're still filing hundreds of thousands of grievances every year. And so long as their clients get reductions, if you don't file, you're going to pay more in taxes. And I'm still not seeing ARC doing its job of rejecting grievances that aren't valid. They're still definitely giving reductions to people that I'm surprised to see get reductions. Many of whom are my clients, and I'm happy for them. We're doing our job. Many of our members are. Thank you, Maureen. I appreciate you answering that question for everyone. I can't see the questions all the time because I'm talking and the screen's a little far away. But yeah, Suffolk is done by towns. So that's generally in a nutshell where we are. I guess then people want to talk about new construction. New construction was hit very hard by reassessment. Not necessarily new construction that was on the rolls before 2017. The county had to make a decision at some point because property values were phasing in to determine, what to do with new construction. And under the prior administration and under this administration, new construction comes on the rolls at pretty much what you pay for it. New construction that came on the tax rolls in 2018 has no phase-in value. It comes in at full value, and it pays the elevated tax rates that everybody else is paying, but they're actually overassessed. What happened is if it came on the rolls in 2017, even if it's at an elevated value, they're able to look at the 2017 value and apply a TPP allowance, which results in a reduction in what homes that were on the rolls in 2017 can pay. Homes in 2018 don't get that TPP exemption. Homes that were on the rolls in 2019 don't get the PPP exemption. And if you not buy a new construction now, and it goes on the rolls in 2020 or 2021, you also aren't going to get that exemption. So what this does is there are homes that thought they were going to pay $25,000. $1 million home in Plainview should be about $25,000. But because the homes don't qualify for the TPP exemption, these homes are paying 40. And that's, it's a lot to pay if you weren't expecting to pay that. There was problems with some condos. And the county is aware of this issue. The county drafted legislation that would create an exemption for new properties. And they sent it over to the Senate and the Assembly. And I think it passed the Assembly and it's being held up in the state Senate. And the county is also drafting legislation to allow for the phase-in of new homes going forward for up to 8 years. So homes that had bought in 2018, 2019, they will go forward and they will hopefully get some type of relief. But yeah, it's an unfair part of reassessment, but it's unavoidable. And judges looked at this, state Supreme Judge, so it's not a high, appellate judge, but the state Supreme Court judge found that this was constitutional, that at some point you have to, you can't have a phase-in. There's nothing to phase in if it's new construction. I do know they're trying to work on some of the condos and trying to deal with some of those issues. And hopefully the Senate will take, action on it. If you own a new home and this affects you, I'd strongly recommend calling your state senator and complaining and tell them that I bought a new home. I thought I'd be pay taxes $25,000. I'm paying 40. It's unfair. Nobody pays 40 on a house paid at $1 million. The county's trying to get the relief. I think had the legislature, had there not been so much infighting, this might have been picked up a little bit earlier. But it is a apparent part of reassessment. And, I was a strong proponent of the phase-in. I felt that if you couldn't destabilize the market, most people have a good portion of their net worth in their homes, and that if you didn't have a phase-in of some type, you could destabilize the market. I figured tax rates were going to go up because you could just see how it was going to happen. I didn't anticipate we'd see, the kind of increases we're going to see. But again, it's temporary. It's really 1 year. For most of these people who are going up this year are going to start seeing reductions next year and should be fixed. I don't see an alternative to the phase-in. I think if we didn't have the phase-in, we'd be forcing out a lot of residents. Can't see all the questions that are coming up. They're coming up and then they're disappearing. Excuse me? Yeah, okay. Anything new? But the county.
New construction, when you'll see it, if you did it, someone did it in 2018, one's no, when it'll be reflected on the taxes, stuff like that.
Was it a new home?
A dormer.
Oh, okay. So usually if you build, you do a construction, usually takes the county about 18 months to catch up and add it to the rolls. So if you did the dormer in 2018, it hasn't shown up yet, it's almost certainly going to show up on your next 2010. It's unlikely to show up in 2022, 2023, but it will show up in 23, 24. Should have been there by now, but it takes about 18 months after the permits are opened. Can't read the entire message.
Mhm.
So
What about new construction generally? Like where's the taxes gonna be if you have new construction?
if you were buying new construction right now, you just have to be really careful. If it's going on the rolls in 2020, 22, 23, and it's just been added to the rolls, then I think you're looking at, 4 years without an exemption. And, you're going to be paying about 25% more than that house would ordinarily pay when reassessment is completed. A lot of times, the sellers will help you out here. I understand one of the condo developments, they're now willing to pay 25% of the taxes for a 4-year period. I know, I've heard a lot of people complaining about, in particular, like this one stretch of homes in Plainview where the taxes are higher because they were added to the rolls in 2018, 2019. But after doing a little research, I'm finding that those homes are selling for $1.3 million, $1.4 million when they previously were purchased for $980,000. So if a seller wants to sell a home and the taxes are too high, they can just offer a concession of $10,000 to $15,000 a year till reassessment is done. They can tell from the taxpayer protection letters where the taxes are going to be. They can offer a concession and still sell the house at a profit. So there are ways to close houses where the taxes are too high because of reassessment. And then these houses, if the phase-in, the new home phase-in bill goes through, then they'll see reduced taxes and they'll be wins for the buyers. But we can't guarantee that yet. Oh, well, thank you, Daniele. Yes.
Can I use those houses as comparables which are sold at a higher price but have lower taxes?
No, as I said earlier on, ARC does not look at the taxes of houses that are comparables. It only looks at the selling price. You can argue that if your house has higher taxes, it should be worth less because the buyers, aren't paying for the higher, don't want to pay more for the house because of the higher taxes. But that argument doesn't seem to be working all that well at ARC. You can try it, but ARC isn't looking at the assessed, the taxes of the houses or the assessed value of the houses that you use. They only want to see the selling price. I get a lot of people who complain on the group, and they're allowed to complain. I mean, that's sort of why the group's there. Certainly, if you know me, I complain a lot about the group, usually about the Republican legislators. But they complain because they are paying more than their neighbors and their houses are smaller. Well, the problem here is the neighbors have grieved their taxes every year, or grieve their tax assessment every year. Sorry, you grieve your assessment, not your taxes. And as a result, have a larger TPP exemption. Because they have a larger TPP exemption, this year they are paying less in taxes than your home. ARC doesn't care about that either. ARC doesn't, somebody, I'm not sure if it was on the group or off the group, was fighting with me because they found out that there are gas lines under their house. And they were concerned that this affects the value of their home. Sorry, folks, there are gas lines all over Nassau County. It doesn't affect the value of your home. No impact at all. Let's see, what else we got?
People are asking if you make renovations to your home, do your taxes go up?
Okay, certain renovations do increase your assessment, and if you make those renovations, your taxes will go up. If you add a dormer, if you expand out, if you add a bathroom, they don't look at things like, you've changed the kitchen. I used to think they do, but I've been told that, they don't look at the interior finishes. So if you have a bathroom and you change the bathroom, still a bathroom. So they don't look about that. Siding does not affect your assessment at all. Roofing doesn't affect your assessment at all. It's generally when you expand your footprint. If you add a deck, if you convert a garage, they will have some value. They don't care anymore whether you completed the renovations. If you took out the permit, they are going to assume that 15 months later, you have finished the renovations and just haven't filed. It used to be a very common practice in Nassau County that people would never close their permits, and the old Nassau County government was so inept that they would never catch it, and they would never raise your assessment as a result of an incomplete renovation. As a result, every home that closed in Nassau County needed an expediter to get closed permits. They don't do that anymore. You open a permit, 15 to 20 months later, they are closing that permit and assuming the work is done. If you abandon the permit, you need to call the Department of Assessment, tell them you abandoned the permit, you didn't do the work, and they will come in and take a look and confirm that you didn't do the work. Where else? Every years, people always ask me, what about a rec room? A rec room typically is a basement that's been finished. If you need to redo siding or windows, it doesn't affect, if you do the work, it's not going to increase your assessed value. If you need to do them and you can show that they are in poor condition and it's affecting the value of your house, it might be the kind of thing that helps you get a reduction in your assessment. You're welcome. Please, type your questions. We'll see what we can answer. If you can see a school from your home and school buses line up outside your home. People ask this all the time. I've never seen anybody get a significant reduction because of a school on their street. People ask the same thing about fire hydrants. I don't think either of those are going to get you a significant reduction. I did have an issue a few years ago. Somebody got a cell phone booster right in front of their house. I thought that was something that would warrant a discussion. I think they got a very small reduction because they could show a photo, and they uploaded a photo of a cell phone booster right in front of your home. I don't want to say people are crazy, but there are people who will not buy a house if there's a cell phone booster right there. So they don't. Another client of mine early on in this process, maybe 7, 8 years ago, she didn't know that the gas station next to her house was leaking. That's a big issue. She didn't understand what the big tower was. Well, the big tower was a water stripper that was going to remove oil off of the water under her house. And yeah, it's one thing to be next to a gas station. It's another thing to be next to a leaking gas station. So what we did is we provided the Assessment Review Commission with proof that the gas station was leaking. We provided them with Department of Environmental Protection letters, and that there was, gasoline, within 10 feet of the basement of her house, and, water levels do rise. So we actually got her a very substantial reduction. But that's the kind of thing that ARC has no way of knowing about unless you tell them. A lot of people ask me about the Bethpage plume. And well, the plume is now in the process of finally being renovated, long overdue. But it's very deep, and people do not seem to be worried about it. And I say that based upon sale prices of homes that are in the plume and on the verge of becoming in the plume. It doesn't seem to have had much of an effect. Again, you get a reduction by showing comparable sales. So if you could show that your comparables are lower because they're in the plume, you might be able to get a reduction. Just right now, you're not able to do that. Anything coming up? Can we say about a county fence? You can point out that a county fence is a blight on your house. But again, I don't know if that's going to get you a big reduction. I know we have one of our friends up in Plainview lives next to a county sump, and it sometimes gets filled with garbage, and sometimes there are animals, And I think she was able to get a small reduction because she was able to show photos of the sump. Are you seeing anything that we haven't seen? Yeah, if the ARC, as I said earlier, if you see the ARC website says the property was sold in 1994, you don't have to change that. The county doesn't care. County ultimately will fix these, but I wouldn't worry about it. Can you leave out that you have a half bath? Look, the county should know what you have in your house. I'm not the truth police here. For my clients, I try to put in an honest reflection of what's in the house. You are signing under oath. No one's ever been prosecuted though for not reporting a half bath or central air. The county's now doing a lot of flyovers and satellite work. So they're actually updating a lot of assessments that hadn't been updated in 20 years because they're able to use satellites to tell how many, if people have central air, if people have pools. I was actually pretty proud of myself. I noticed that my own property card indicated that I had a in-ground pool. When I bought the house, I actually thought I had an in-ground pool, but it's actually a semi-in-ground, above-ground pool that just has a deck around it, and that is not accessible. So I actually had the county come out, take a look, and they removed a little bit of value. So, you look at your property card, and if they say you have central air and you don't, you can call them in and they can fix it. If you've closed up a fireplace, you can tell them that. If you've removed a deck or a patio. But again, for the most part, that doesn't affect your taxes all that much. Look at it this way. If you take a $50,000 repair and you remove it, or a $10,000 item like a patio, and you remove it, that's only adding $10 to your assessment. And I don't really think you want to have the Department of Assessment nosing around your property, certainly not on the inside. So somebody just asked about foreclosures. You can't use a foreclosure as a comparable unless it's your home that you bought and you bought it as a foreclosure. The county will allow you to use your home, which you purchased as a foreclosure, as one of your comparables.
Do your comps need to be in the same school district?
Comps have, it would be very rare that you could find a good comparable that is not in your school district. Okay. Otherwise, everybody would be using, school districts that, where which don't have good school districts, and the houses don't sell for the same price. You have to be using your school district. In Merrick, you can use Belmore if you can't find anything close. A lot of times, Belmore waterfront, they'll compare you to Merrick waterfront, vice versa. If you have two good school districts next to each other and they're on the border, Jericho might consider Syosset, Syosset might consider Jericho, but that's not going to save you anything. You really need to be in your same school district. You really need now to be as close as possible. I'm thinking, it's if you start moving more than a half a mile from your house, ARC's going to know the comparables aren't any good. Being near a railroad, people always ask that question. I grew up in Lynbrook on the north side of town, and I could hear the railroad. It came at 6 o'clock in the morning. I lived, about maybe a quarter mile from the station. I could hear it every morning. Wasn't a big deal. Well, my comparables for that house would have been within the same general range. They would have heard that. But now along Whitehall Street, the train ran 30 feet behind your house. And if you lived on Whitehall Street every day, starting at 4:30, the train would come from Malvern into the Westwood station and your house would shake. That's something to make sure that, the Assessment Review Commission knows about. If you live right on a railroad, right on Sunrise Highway, right on, Merrick Road, and, you can feel the traffic, hear the railroad, you need to let them know that you're in a different situation than all your comparables. Okay. So that's something you want to look at.
What's included in your square footage calculation? Is an attached garage included? Is a basement
No,
not
basement,
finished?
a basement, an unfinished basement's not included, attached garage is not included in your square footage. And they use the outside wall measurement. All right. It's interesting, if I was going to buy another house, I'd probably buy a high ranch, because high ranches, they don't consider the basement, which everybody, of course, turns into an extra bedroom or an office and a family room. They don't consider that living space. It's considered a basement when everybody else makes it into living space. So you actually get more living space and they are assessed for lower. It's just an anomaly in the law, but it's really good for first-time buyers because taxes of high ranches are almost always lower than the taxes of a similar sized colonial. Got to take a sip of my iced coffee here because I'm starting to doze out and the voice is starting to go. What about splits? What about them? Somebody was assessed for $6,000 less than what they paid. That's, you have to think about whether you want to file again. It seems very unlikely that you are going to get a reduction. But as I've said, this year I've seen a lot of people get reductions. And I've seen a lot of people get reductions to less than they paid. So I can't tell you don't file. I can tell you that there's no risk if you file yourself. If you have a split and you have no basement, the basement doesn't count. They're not going to assess you for a basement. But in a split, the ground floor does count as living space. Anything coming in? Let's see what's on the list. Again, if assessments are frozen for 22, 20, 23, should you grieve? Look, if you got a 15% reduction over the last 2 years, probably not. If you're assessed lower than you're paid, probably not. But I can't, in good conscience, I can't tell you that you have a 0% chance at a reduction. I actually think that if you file a really strong reduction, your grievance, you might still get one. So the fact that the rolls are frozen shouldn't stop you from filing.
Do pools affect your taxes? In-ground bid?
In-ground pools are taxable. Gunite cement pools are taxed higher than vinyl, and but you both, they both increase your assessed value. Above ground and semi-above ground pools do not. And even semi-above ground pools that have a deck around them so that they look in ground do not, although the deck is accessible. If you don't have permits, can you file a grievance? Yes.
If there's someone with, if you have a child with disabilities living in the home, is there any type of exemption, or is that only for owners?
It's only for owners. There should be an exemption. I've always thought for families dealing with disabilities. There are funds available, though, for you to renovate the home. There's some grants available. You might want to look into that to make the house more handicap or disability friendly. Are there any differences for towns with village and taxes? Yes, most of the towns and cities have their own taxes, and they have their own police forces, and they have their own parks. So you pay less county and town taxes if you live in these villages. But most of them use the county's assessment system. Not all, but most. And you can find out whether they use the county's system or assessed value by just calling your town hall. Now, something worth noting, if you live in Glen Cove, if you uses the county system, but only for county and town taxes. So you pay very little general tax based upon the county, even if you get a reduction of your county assessed value, it doesn't save you all that much. They have their own assessor, and the school taxes are based upon the the Glen Cove assessors valuations, not the counties. Just, something worth noting. What about Freeport? What about Freeport? Freeport uses their own assessed values for their own properties, but they use the county's assessed value for the school taxes.
Can we update/edit the application after we submitted it?
You can update the application online up until April 30th, 2021. You just log into the left of the of the Arrow website. You click on review grievances. You're going to have to put in 2022, 2023. It'll pop up and allow you to edit it.
What if you forgot your user and password?
If you email the county, they will provide it to you. You can also set up a new one and refile, but it's probably easier just to contact the county.
Home is listed as a 2-family in a single-family zone. Does that increase my taxes?
Okay, 2-family homes are a really special and difficult issue. When you try to grieve a 2-family home, you find much less comparables. So, there just aren't a lot of legal 2-family homes that sell in Nassau County. So you might only have 3 or 4 comparables. Now, if you're using it as a 2-family home and you plan to sell it as a 2-family home, you need to keep it as a 2-family home. But a lot of people aren't using them. They get rid of the other kitchen, or they will get rid of the other kitchen. They want to use it as a 1-family home. If you're committed to using it as a 1-family home and you decide to sell it as you're going to sell it as a 1-family home, because you'll never get the 2-family designation back. You call up the county, the Department of Assessment, and they will in fact lower your, they will come in, they'll inspect, they'll mark that you've removed the other kitchen, they'll make you a 1-family, and you'll have a lot of other comparables. When I grieve a 2-family home, very often, or a home that was a mother-daughter that has the second kitchen, very often I will use a neighbor's home to generate the comparables of a single-family home. And then I will manually enter those comparables, and I will put in the fact section that there is a second kitchen, but you aren't using it as a second kitchen. You're not generating any rent out of it. You just haven't removed it. And then I will argue that, if the comparables show 450, maybe you should be at 460 because you have the second kitchen. I've had some success with that, but I can't say it works every time. If you want to be assessed as a 1-family home, then you need to remove the kitchen and have the county look at it. What do we got?
Is there a maximum amount of comps you can use when filing?
You use as many good comps as you can find. There's no minimum. I've used up to 16 good comparables when I found the county was completely wrong. The minimum would be 0. We've had people file with 0 and be successful. If you have one good comp, it may be enough to get you a reduction. If it's the house next door, it's the same house, you might have a really good argument. If it's your house that you bought, you have a perfect argument even with one house. County won't always lower you down to your assessed value, what you paid, but sometimes even lower. So,
what makes a finished basement into living space, like categorized versus
I really don't know. I think it depends on the town. I know in town of Hempstead that if it's less than 6 feet 10 inches to the beam, it's considered a crawl space. If it's more than that and has a heater, it can be a finished basement.
If it's not a bedroom, just has walls and flooring.
It doesn't have heat. That's going to be the answer. It's not walls and flooring. It's whether there's separate heating and ventilation. Well, if a house has old, leaky, or non-working windows, somebody just asked, I would show them photos of the windows and perhaps have an estimate of what it would cost to replace. But again, if it costs on a house $20,000 to replace the windows, that's probably on some houses that's low, but I'd say 20,000 is not a bad number. We're only talking as change in assessment of $20.
If I add a foyer to my house, will it increase my taxes?
It will if you're building new space. If you're just reconfiguring space that already exists, it will not. All right, we're going to give you 20 seconds to show me there are more questions. Otherwise, I think I've answered every one. Oh, here we go. Is there a way to retrieve a forgotten username and password? Yes. You email the town, the county. They will send it to you.
Where you go to log in.
Sorry?
Where you would normally go to log
When
in.
you go to log in, you indicate you forgot your password, and they will tell you and provide the information. That's why I say keep it simple. You have the list. I'm just seeing them flash, right?
Me too.
Okay, got to slow down. What's the oldest sale you can use? You could use sales back to 2018, but they'd better be really good sales. For example, if you bought your house in 2018, 2019, you can use that comparable. But, if it's not a really exact comparable, or, I'd be using late 2019 and 2020. There are certainly, in most districts right now, there are tons and tons of sales. There were almost 600 sales in Levittown in 2020. You should be able to find comparables. Where you might not find comparables is certain waterfront houses, certain estate properties. But most of you are going to have plenty of 2020 comparables. And if you're using older, the assessors, the people at assessment review are going to be wondering why.
Will assessment that doubled due to renovations may result in a sudden double in taxes.
Oh gosh, if you more than double your house, you're turning it into new construction, and it could well more than double your taxes. And probably rightly so, but yeah, you could definitely do that, especially now where new construction doesn't get any phase-in. Yeah, so you got to be really careful and work with an architect who understands assessed values. Look, it's really hard to estimate what a construction is going to do to your home. We had a client, well, actually, no, I think they were a member, who had a 12 or 1,500 square foot house in Roslyn. They added a second floor with 3 bedrooms. They added 800 square feet onto a 1,500 square foot house. The house before was really a $500,000 house. I think they might have been assessed at $450,000, but now it became a 4-bedroom, 4.5-bedroom home, 2,200 square feet in Roslyn. When we looked for comparables, it was showing it was $1 million, maybe a little bit more. So their taxes, their assessment more than doubled, and sold the house, the taxes. And when they sold it, they took out a lot of money.
What if a single family home with a professional office from a previous owner is not being used as one currently? Does it make sense to change our filing status to a single family home?
Yes. They assume that if you have a workspace office from a prior owner, that you're using it for the same purpose, and they assume an income, and you should absolutely report that as not being used, and they will probably send an inspector and confirm that. You are, however, if you have a home office and it's in what used to be a commercial office, you're allowed to use it as an office, and it should not increase your assessment.
If you plan on renovating a dormer in 2021, can you still grieve the
Yeah.
2022-23?
You should grieve your 2020, your 22, 23 before you add the dormer. And then you should grieve it again after you add the dormer. Time to do it is before the construction is. You want to be as low as possible, especially for the lower you are, the better your phase-in value will be on it too. Can't read them all. They're just popping up too fast.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you got them on the side.
I'm doing both.
Okay.
There's like a thing on the side and
Somebody asked about rejecting an offer and getting a second review. If you have an offer and you reject it, you lose your initial offer, and it's unlikely that they will not offer it back to you. But the problem is they don't always get to you with the second reviews so technically you've rejected the offer to get the second review and you're in limbo until you hear back from them. You have a vacant house 2 doors down from you. And does that count as something you should let people know? Yeah, that's something you should put in section D. And I'd probably even add a photo of that vacant house and upload it and show them that this is a real issue and that people will not buy on your street because of it. It's probably not true to some extent, but you might actually think it's a problem and you might be able to see a reduction because of that.
What do you do if the property searches only give you sale prices above yours?
Well, you smile because it probably means you're fairly assessed. You then do what I said is you go to Google and you search for sold properties on your street and sold properties on all of the adjacent streets, and you see if anything else comes up. I don't think if you can submit any comparables at all, you're going to get a reduction. But, you know, I've heard of the grievance firms getting reductions for people without submitting any comparables. Maybe you get lucky, but it probably means you're fairly assessed.
Do things like a PVC fence, if it is replacing an existing chain link fence, raise the taxes?
No, changing to PVC fence will not raise your taxes or your assessment. Okay, I'm going to read this one out loud. Can you answer this? We bought the house for $575 and did new construction for $450, but the county gave a full market value as $1.275. Can I get a reduction when I file a tax grievance based on how much I spent? I think that's one of the ways we would actually approach this if we were handling it for you, is we would show what it costs, the initial work, the additional work cost. Problem is that when you do such a substantial renovation, the county assumes that you've made everything in the house new, and they know that you put the work in expecting to increase the value. I would probably still argue for $1 million, and I think you have a shot at getting something in that range. But you'd have to do a fairly detailed grievance as to what you did. Obviously, the county is going to be showing comparables of what your new house is. As I recently just mentioned, I saw somebody add $300,000 to a $450,000 house, and they were then assessed over $1 million. And I think the same, it could be justified here. You do have an argument that you can make.
Is the veterans reduction, does it last as long as you own the house? Is the amount the same every year, or does it go with percentage?
It changes. The veterans exemption changes depending on the assessed value of the house. The veterans exemption lasts as long as the veteran and spouse do. A lot of people, though, we see this all the time, that people purchase houses where the taxes are artificially low because the prior owners had a senior exemption and they had a veterans exemption, and the new owners don't qualify for either. So what happens is the first year the people are in the house, they pay reduced taxes based upon the exemptions that the prior owner had. Then the county comes back and it surcharges you for the exemptions that you weren't entitled to. It's actually fair. It's fair to all the residents. The county ends up waiting that extra year for the money. But for some homeowners, it's a shock.
How do you have to grieve your taxes every year?
You don't have to grieve your taxes every year. In fact, you never grieve your taxes. You grieve your assessment. You don't have to grieve your assessment every year. If you are happy with your assessed value and you believe that the county is doing the right thing and not lowering your neighbors when they don't deserve it, and they are assessing all properties the same, you don't have to grieve your assessment. You can sit home and not spend the 20 minutes that it takes you to grieve your assessment. But if the county gives a lot of your neighbors reductions and you don't grieve and don't get a reduction, your taxes are going up. If you don't mind paying more in taxes, you don't have to grieve your assessment ever. You can sit home and do nothing. But since you spent the last hour and a half listening to me tell bad jokes and walk through this 2 hours. We're on 2 hours?
Mhm.
Wow, no wonder I'm losing my voice. If you spent the last 2 hours, you can spend the next 15 minutes filing your tax assessment grievance. But you don't have to file it. No one's forcing you to file it.
Neighbor adjacent to my backyard has an unkept backyard which resembles a landfill. Lots of animals, including raccoons and possums, have been known to create habitats there. At times, the animals will come onto my property underneath the fence. Can this help my tax grievance?
It can help your assessment grievance. You can take photos of it. If animal control has ever been there, you can show the reports. You might be able to get an assessment reduction because of it. It's not going to be a big one, but it's certainly worth mentioning.
For a newly purchased home in 2020, should I just use my property as a comparable, or should I use other recent sold properties?
If your home has sold for less than your assessment in 2020, you only need to use your home. Could be better if you use other homes to show that you paid a fair price for your house, but your own sale is your best comparable.
The number on the Nassau property site for 22-23 is higher than the settlement amount I was given for 21-22. Which number should I use to look up for comps?
The 2020, 21-22, because as the county froze 22-23, your final 21-22 value is going to be your 22-23 value. We done? All right. Good night, all. Thank you, Legislator Drucker. Thank you, Crystal. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Leanna. Thank you, District 16. Join Nassau, grieve your tax assessment free. Don't PM me unless you want to become a client of the firm. We do charge a $250 flat rate, so there is risk to you. You might lose that if I don't get your reduction, but you can post in the group if you have any general questions and we will answer them usually within 12 hours. Remember, you have until April 30th to file your grievance. Good luck, all. Thank you. I have to leave. Got it. I got it. Don't come near me.